relies on nuclear power for 70% of its electricity. This makes France the most nuclear dependent country in the world. And guess what? They use uranium to power it. But what happens when the uranium they use in France is actually stolen from Niger? And Niger kicked them out in 2023 and said they have to pay appropriate market rates for the uranium. Let's break it down in this video.
France is trembling. The lights are flickering in Paris, not just metaphorically, but literally. The nation that once stood tall as a beacon of industrial power is now teetering on the edge of an energy cliff. Why? Because one small country in West Africa, long exploited and long underestimated, finally stood up and said, "No more." Niger, the land beneath which lies some of the world's richest uranium deposits, has flipped the script, and in doing so, it has shaken the foundations of the old colonial order. France depends on nuclear energy for about 70% of its electricity. That's the highest nuclear dependency of any country on Earth. Yet, for all its reactors, 56 in total, France has no uranium mines of its own, not a single one. To keep the grid alive, the nation has had to reach far and wide, and for decades it looked to its former colony, Niger, to feed that hunger. But Niger, once silenced by diplomatic manipulation and resource theft, rose in 2023 to declare its own sovereignty. For decades, uranium from Niger was sold to France at rates far below global market value. The West got rich. Niger remained poor. This wasn't a partnership, it was plunder. Even after so-called independence, French nuclear companies like Areva, now Orano, held tight control over Niger's uranium industry, locking in deals that benefited Paris while keeping Niamey in poverty. At one point, uranium made up 70% of Niger's exports, but contributed only 5% to its GDP. That is not just an economic imbalance. It is injustice on a grand scale. The 2023 coup in Niger was the match that lit the powder keg. After President Bazoum was overthrown, the new military-led government announced a new era. French troops were ordered out. Military deals were canceled. Uranium exports were halted until fair market terms could be negotiated. The message was unmistakable. This land and its resources belong to the people, not to the corporations in Paris. And if France wants uranium, it will have to pay what it's worth. This act of defiance wasn't isolated. It sparked a regional fire. In neighboring Burkina Faso, President Captain Ibrahim Traoré had already begun charting a similar path. Bold, righteous, unapologetically African. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso aligned itself with Niger and Mali to form the Sahel Alliance, a united front against neo-colonial control and Western exploitation. These nations, once fractured by artificial borders and colonial manipulation, are now standing shoulder to shoulder. Their rallying cry? Sovereignty, dignity, and resistance. France didn't see it coming. Or perhaps it did, but underestimated the will of African people to fight for their birthright. The French state, once so confident in its grip over West African uranium, is now scrambling. With Niger no longer willing to be exploited, France has turned to Australia, Canada, and Kazakhstan to fill the void. But it's not that simple. The cost of importing uranium from these faraway nations is far higher, and the deals are not soaked in centuries of forced compliance. For the first time in generations, France is having to compete on a level playing field, and it's losing. While all of this unfolds, the cracks in France's energy infrastructure are widening. This past summer, heat waves scorched the European continent, sending energy demand through the roof. Blackouts swept through parts of France. Electricity prices surged. It was an eerie reversal, the very same power shortages and instability that Europe once mocked Africa for, now unfolding in the heart of Europe. And the irony runs deep. For decades, the West branded Africa as unstable, incapable of managing resources, forever reliant on foreign aid. But look who's unstable now. Look who's scrambling for survival. As the global order shifts, the narrative is changing. Africa is not the victim anymore. Africa is the gatekeeper. The continent holds the keys to the world's future, its minerals, its youth, its land, its vision. And some African nations are no longer afraid to say so. Captain Traoré of Burkina Faso is not just a political leader, he is a symbol of this awakening. Young, fearless, and deeply rooted in the spirit of justice, he has captured the imagination of a continent. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has become more than a country. It has become a message. That message says, we don't need permission. We don't need approval. We are enough. Burkina Faso, unlike Niger, is not yet a uranium powerhouse. But that doesn't matter. What it offers is more valuable: solidarity, vision, and a roadmap for other African nations to follow. Traoré has declared openly that Burkina Faso will never again be a playground for foreign militaries. French troops were expelled. Agreements written in the language of exploitation were torn up. And most importantly, the people were told the truth. This truth is spreading. It is waking up young Africans from Ouagadougou to Dakar, from Bamako to Kinshasa. They are asking hard questions. Why do our countries remain poor despite having all the wealth beneath our soil? Why do our leaders bow to foreign powers while our children die in poverty? And most importantly, what happens when we finally say no more? There is a wave building. And it is not just political, it is spiritual, it is cultural, it is economic. Africa is remembering who she is. From the empires of Mali and Songhai to the scholars of Timbuktu, this continent has a memory longer than colonial lies. That memory is awakening, and France, along with the rest of the old guard, is learning what it means when Africa remembers. As Niger stood its ground, Russia began stepping in, not with colonial arrogance, but with an alternative offer. The Sahel nations, fed up with the double standards and broken promises of their former rulers, welcomed new partnerships. Russia saw an opportunity, not just for strategic influence, but to be seen as a counterweight to neo-colonial control. The leaders of the Sahel Alliance are not naive. They know that every foreign interest has its agenda. But this time, they have options. They are in control. They are the ones setting the terms. China, too, has taken notice. With its massive Belt and Road Initiative, China is investing heavily across the African continent. Unlike former colonial powers, China's approach has been less ideological and more transactional. That doesn't make it perfect, but it does make it different. Chinese companies are securing exploration licenses in Burkina Faso and maintaining uranium interests in Niger. But Beijing has been careful to avoid taking sides during the recent political shifts. Instead, Chinese media have emphasized Africa's right to self-determination. Whether for uranium, gold, or digital infrastructure, Africa now has leverage. And it's not just in the halls of government where this awakening is happening. African families, diasporas, and entrepreneurs are also waking up. More and more people are moving back, relocating their businesses, buying land, and preparing for the long journey of building Africa's future from the ground up. It's not easy. Corruption still lurks. Old systems don't die quietly. But a new generation is emerging, one that is less interested in pleasing the West and more determined to protect its people. France's current crisis is a warning to the world. You cannot build your future on stolen wealth. Eventually, the bill comes due. And when that bill arrives, there's no amount of PR or military power that can stop justice from knocking at the door. The lights may be flickering in France, but in Africa, something is burning much brighter: the fire of self-determination. It may have taken centuries, but the continent is rising, not as a servant to the global powers, but as a sovereign force. And as this new era unfolds, we must ask ourselves, what role will we play? Will we continue to chase crumbs from colonial tables, or will we build our own? This is not a moment to watch from the sidelines. It is a call to action. The same courage that moved Niger to demand fair uranium prices, the same fire that led Burkina Faso to cast off foreign boots, lives in every one of us. We must rise, not just with words, but with work. Let's invest in our own people. Let's educate our youth about our history. Let's build local economies, reclaim our resources, and support leaders who serve their people, not foreign masters. Because when just 3 nations united, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, they created fear in the hearts of empires. Imagine what could happen if 5 united, or 10, or all 54. The world would never be the same. Let this story be your reminder. Sovereignty is not given, it is taken. And when it is taken with courage, with unity, and with truth, the whole world shifts. Share this message. Stand with the rising continent, and never forget, the power is in our hands now. The light no longer shines in Paris. It glows from the Sahel. From Niamey to Ouagadougou, a new dawn has begun. The question is, are you ready to rise with it?